A year ago together, we explored the people and places impacted in the western communities of Palm Beach County by the historic Okeechobee Hurricane of 1928. At that time, I decided to make the video 2 parts, so each part could be given the attention and respect it deserved, without the video being terribly long. In today's video, part 2, as we visit these locations, we will be discussing the recovery efforts of the victims and where they were put to rest, and the controversies surrounding the recovery efforts and burial locations. For those of you not familiar with the historic Okeechobee Hurricane of 1928, here's a short video before we begin today's journey. I will also link part 1 of the historic Okeechobee Hurricane of 1928 in the description box, and I highly recommend you watch that before watching part 2. Let's begin. As we begin the second half of our journey together, I've decided to visit 3 primary burial locations. That is not to say there aren't reportedly several other smaller locations where victims were put to rest. But for the purposes of this video, we will be visiting the mass grave at Port Mayaca Cemetery, Woodlawn Cemetery in West Palm Beach, and lastly, the mass burial site also located at the corner of 25th Street and Tamarind in West Palm Beach. Along the way, we will discuss the recovery efforts and the controversy surrounding these sites. In my research, it was difficult to determine whether these sites were chosen one after the other or simultaneously. However, the research suggests that as more victims were recovered, the more places needed to be designated for burial. Port Mayaca seems to be the logical first place, since it was the closest they would have chosen for burial. So that's where we will begin today. All right, hey guys. So I made my way to the Port Mayaca Cemetery. This is the mass burial site at the Port Mayaca, which is right behind me. The Port Mayaca Cemetery. Now, the cemetery is run by the city of Pahokee now. At one time, I believe it was a private entity. So this is the closest location, burial location, mass grave, to the actual western communities. It's probably less than 20 miles away from Belglade, Canal Point, and where they were recovering the victims. And they have erected a flag here and a marker. Now, this mass grave site supposedly is from the Comfort Station. I'm going to back this up a little bit for you guys. Is from the Comfort Station all the way to the Cemetery Road. Not the highway, but the Cemetery Road. And now it's my opinion, but I can't back this up with definitive research. This is probably the first location in which they decided to put the victims to rest. Now, they say there was anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 victims of the storm, fatalities, deaths caused by the storm. And there were 3 major places that they were put to rest. Now, Port Mayaca doing research, is probably the less of the controversial sites. There was about 1,600 people that were put to rest here. Now, they didn't know exactly how they were laid to rest, if they were put symmetrically, if they were put in a mass grave of some sort. So, but they do estimate about 1,600 of the victims were actually laid to rest here from the neighboring cities, Belglade, Canal Point, and Pahokee. So they did get a grant in 2012, I believe, to do some ground penetrating radar and some investigation and take a look and see if they could actually determine how many people were actually put to rest here and how they were put to rest. And what they came away with that is basically there was 2 major locations where they put a group of the victims. So I do not think they were laid in any sort of symmetrical pattern. They were just simply put here to rest as quickly as possible, simply because they were recovering the bodies. They were probably in later stages of decomposition, so they wanted to put them to rest as quickly as possible. Now, there are other factors of how they recovered the bodies and how they put them to rest. But we are going to cover those on the way back to West Palm. We're going to look at the route in which the recovery trucks, the transport trucks for those victims had to drive. We're going to take a look at that, their recovery efforts, and we're going to do that on the way back to West Palm. But for the now, this, like I said, this is Port Mayaka Cemetery, and this is the mass burial site right here. And I took a look around. I'll share that with you guys. But they also have a marker out on the highway. Now, I know for a fact that marker was not erected until the 1950s. I do not know when the headstone and the flagpole was put up. I really don't have any real information on when that was put up. I doubt it was done expeditiously after they put the people to rest here, but I do know the sign, the marker, was put up in 1950. So again, here is, I'll let you guys look at it. From the comfort station, like I said, this is supposedly the mass grave, all the way across this property, bordering the road there and the road here. And there's a memorial headstone right there. I'll do a closer shot for you guys to take a look at it. Again, there's not heaps of information about Port Mayaka and what happened with the burial here, and a lot of controversy surrounding this site, as much as there is a couple of the other ones. It's a beautiful place. It's very easy to find. All you have to do is Google the Port Mayaka mass burial site, 1928 hurricane, or the Port Mayaka Cemetery, either one. It's open 7 days a week. It's run by the city of Pahokee. So this is where 1,600 of the victims were put to rest in a mass burial grave behind me. I absolutely recommend you come and paying your respects and visiting here. The area itself is beautiful. It's old Florida. It reminds me of going back in the 40s and 50s in Florida, as far as the homes, the area, the surroundings, the landscape, everything is very unique to old Florida. So if you get a chance, I would always recommend you stop by, pay your respects, and check out the cemetery. It's absolutely beautiful. And like, again, I walked around, shared some of the locations with you, and you can take a look at it for yourself. So that's it. We're going to leave Port Mayaka behind. we're going to head back east. Excuse me. We're going to head back east into West Palm Beach, and we're going to take a look at the route in which they used to get the victims to West Palm Beach from out here in the western communities, and a couple of the locations that they put the victims to rest once we get into West Palm Beach. Let's continue our journey. Let's head east and let's go take a look at our next location, which is probably going to be Woodlawn Cemetery. We're probably going to stop there first, and then our last one is going to be 25th and Tamarind. Okay guys, so let's continue on our journey. As we travel east on the same route as the recovery trucks, let's take a moment to discuss the recovery and transport efforts of the victims after the hurricane. The research is hazy regarding the timeline of the burial location selection, so I'm going to proceed logically based upon distance and availability of burial locations. First, it must be mentioned that in South Florida in September, the heat and humidity would have made the recovery and search process dreadful, and would have greatly accelerated the decomposition process of the victims not located quickly. There are accounts that efforts were made to cremate the victims on site, similar to an outdoor funeral pyre. How prevalent that was is hard to determine through the research. Since the victims were ultimately transported to the known burial locations, cremations on site was either unsuccessful or ceased due to moral objections. We know that 1,600 victims were put to rest at the Port Mayaca Cemetery, so logically, as more victims were discovered, another location needed to be designated. There were also reportedly 69 or 70 white victims that were transported to Woodlawn Cemetery and put to rest. Due to the segregation at the time, the black migrant victims were not allowed burial there. So ultimately, the corner of 25th Street and Tamarind was selected for the nearly 700 more black migrant workers recovered. Those 700 victims were loaded into flatbed trucks, perhaps 10-20 per truck, for a minimum 2-hour trip from the western communities to West Palm Beach. These trips were made during the September heat and humidity without AC or refrigeration. This must have been one of the most ghastly, unenviable tasks imaginable. All right, guys, we're at our second location. Now, we discussed on the way over here the route in which the transport trucks used to get to the east side of Palm Beach County, which is West Palm Beach is where we are now. Now, I'm in the second location, which is Woodlawn Cemetery. Now, this is, as I said, on the in the route over here, in the drive over here, that this was where the white victims were put to rest. They were transported here to Woodlawn Cemetery. Now, as I stated, the migrant workers, the black migrant workers, farm workers, were not allowed to be buried here due to the segregation at the time. So only the white victims were brought here, and what I understand through the research is they were assembled here and allowed identification by family, relatives, and friends. So behind me is the marker. Now, I'm gonna spin this around so you can take a look at the marker in the gravesite. Now, this marker is very old, very withered. Now, I do not know when they put this up. I honestly think it was in the 50s, but I don't know. But you can tell it's very weathered and it's very old, and it's not in very good shape, or they made it this way, and the engraving is very shallow. Now, I think the row here is the 69 or 70 victims that were buried here at Woodlawn. I believe that's this row here. And again, here's the marker. And you'll see Dixie Highway is right out just to the east of me. That's downtown West Palm Beach. That's where we are. You can see the skyline of downtown West Palm Beach. And behind me is some condos. And we're on the north side. This is on the north side back road of the Woodlawn Cemetery. I'm going to tell you, this was no small feat trying to find this marker. They have photos of it online, but it's very difficult to find, and when you do see it, it's hard to read unless you're on foot. So I wanted to make this my first stop in West Palm Beach so you can see Woodlawn. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in Woodlawn due to the fact that I have a video on my channel where I spent a couple days here at Woodlawn. If you want to see the video regarding Woodlawn Cemetery, I'll put it in the description box below. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time walking around here. There's plenty of material in that video. It'll show you the north side, south side, every part of this cemetery I put on there. So again, I'm not going to do a lot of walking around, but I'm going to show you one more time the mass grave site and the headstone, which is right behind me, and of the 1928 hurricane victims in the Woodlawn Cemetery. This is the mass grave here. You'll see again, that marker is very hard to read. And even standing here in front of it says, in memory of those citizens of Palm Beach County who lost their lives in the storm of 1928. And again, I'm assuming, I do not know for certain, because again, the research is very, very, very convoluted and sketchy, but I believe this is the actual location where those victims were laid to rest. And once more at the marker. All right, so we've taken a look at Woodlawn, and again, I have a video that I spent a couple days here, so I am going to put that in the description box for you guys. But again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I have a whole video if you want to see Woodlawn and some of the history regarding Woodlawn. And that video, I did not highlight this marker because I could not find it. It took me half a day to find this marker, believe it or not, for this video. Maybe someone with better vision or a little quicker on their feet maybe might have found it a little sooner, I don't know, but it is very difficult to find if you don't know where it is. So anyway, so I'll put that video in the description box for you guys, and now we're going to move on to our last site, which is the mass burial site at 25th and Tamarind, downtown West Palm Beach, further north of here. All right, guys, let's continue our journey. All right, guys, I just want to jump in here before we make it to our final destination on this video and kind of make a correction. On my last video, the Evergreen Cemetery, we did a segment where we visited Flamingo Park, which was the old unnamed cemetery on Dixie Highway. At that time, I stated that the people that were put to rest there had been relocated to Woodlawn for their final resting place. As I did research for this project, I found that that may not be true. I found articles regarding them constructing the park right over the cemetery without making any changes, relocating anyone. As a matter of fact, the contractor stated he did everything shallow with the landscaping and the sidewalk due to his fear of uncovering the people who were put to rest there. So I just wanted to make that quick correction so I can be as accurate as possible on my content. Second thing is, I've had a couple people reach out to me and ask if how I felt about doing a paranormal investigation out there. And my question to my subscribers is, first, do you think that's respectful? Is that something you would like to see? Is it something that, as a group, as a channel, we feel like that's something that we could do, and we feel comfortable with it? So leave me a comment, let me know if you would like me to go there and do sort of a nighttime paranormal investigation, see if there are any spirits lingering there that have any messages they would like to share with us. So please leave me a comment, give me your opinion about whether you think that's respectful or not, and if so, do you want to see me go out there and do it if you're interested in it, because it's easily accessible, and there shouldn't be any problem getting there and setting up the equipment and doing a investigation there. So drop me a comment, let me know. All right, guys, without further delay, let's get back to the video. All right, so we've made it to our final destination, location, mass burial site. This is the West Palm Beach mass burial site at 25th and Tamarind. Tamarind Boulevard is behind me, and 25th Street is to my right, which would be the north. So we're gonna walk along the path together, and we're gonna look at this. Now, this whole city block has been designated as a park and a burial site. And it also has signage on it that reminds you that it's a sacred location and to be respectful and not litter and just basically treat it as a sacred memorial. So I'm gonna turn this around and we're gonna walk down the path together, take a look at it. All right, here's the sign I was speaking of right here. They actually say to be respectful. And I'm going to actually increase this up a little bit. Switch hands. We're going to walk along here. They also have a memorial plaque here, basically displaying the information regarding the storm. A lot of these photos you probably recognize from our two videos. And you'll see the banyan trees here, very large banyan trees. Basically looks like a landscaped park until you get to the actual mass burial site where they have it fenced off. So there's no foot traffic in there for the most part. Just giving you a big view of everything, and a gorgeous tree there. I'm not sure what sort of tree that is. I used to know the name of it, but I have forgotten. I have a little circle here. Some benches for quiet reflection, and you have your stonework in there. This is actually pretty nice. It's a little different than the last time I was here. I don't remember the rocks being in there, but that doesn't mean they weren't in there. I just don't remember it. And you can see the extent of the fence for the graveyard, cemetery mass burial site. They pretty much have it determined where the actual location was. And you'll see that's there. And we're gonna walk up in here. And they have a bench with also another memorial here, a marker. I'm gonna give you a moment. See the marker? Get a little closer. We have a pedestrian on the road there, being a little loud. And they have the two pillars here. See the two pillars? mass grave site. And here we're facing to the west and panning north to east. Now, supposedly, I'm not sure if this entire area is the mass grave site or just the small fenced area. I've tried to determine that through the research, but it's not real clear. But I'm assuming, since they've put a special cordon off here, fencing, that this is the actual site to where the 674, I believe, people were put to rest from the 1928 hurricane. They were transported here from the western communities and put to rest here on this property. Here's the sign, the memorial. This is the, like I said, this is the mass grave site, 25th Street and Tamron. Now, what I understand, the first-hand account, they came, they unceremoniously unloaded the victims, put them in the mass grave, put lime, and no chance for identification from the family or friends, which was pointed out is a stark comparison or contrast to what happened at Woodlawn. And I mentioned that first-hand accounts say that they were assembled there, friends and family were given the chance to identify. The victims that were put to rest here, they were not, their family and friends were not afforded the same opportunity. So this by far is the most controversial of the three locations that we've been to. On September 30th, 1928, they had a moment of silence and they had a simultaneous service for all three locations, Port Mayaca, Woodlawn, and here at 25th and Tamron. They had a special speaker read a mayor's proclamation, Merrick Bethune, who was a black educator, activist, did the proclamation and the service. And pretty much after that point, the location was pretty much lost into obscurity until 1991, roughly 60 years later, when Nigerian spiritualist did a ceremony here recognizing the location. So that's pretty much the history of this particular location as far as the controversy goes and the lack of recognition. And everyone who watches my channel knows how I feel about everyone should have dignity in life and death equally. And the way in which the victims were put to rest here with little or no dignity, recognition for 60 years, and then forgotten. And they had to fight several times, what I understand, to prevent construction on this property and just having this corner lot covered completely by buildings or apartments or whatever commerce they wanted to build here. So that's it for our three locations, and it was not only was it a natural disaster what happened, but it was humanitarian tragedy as well. What happened and how the victims were treated and the length of time it took for them to be recognized and get the dignity and respect that they deserved. So I hope this video helps bring awareness to that situation, and that it will help correct or help prevent that ever happening again to anyone. Again, I'm a strong believer that every human deserves respect in life and death, and tragedies like this should be prevented at all costs. And that will do it for this video.
This has been, again, like many of my videos, many of my research, I'm appalled by some of the things I've learned, some of the things I read. Some of them I can't even share on the YouTube video platform. I hope that this video brings awareness and helps prevent any sort of tragedy like this happening again. So I'm going to leave you with some video of the location, and we can reflect on now a beautiful, protected location for the victims of this storm. And I'll leave you that, and I will see you on the next one.